Hi, welcome to the Catholic Corner. I'm Monsignor Walter Nolan. My guest today has a great story, and he's a great storyteller. It's a story about a journey to another part of the world. It's a journey that changed his life forever. Jeff Bruno is a parishioner at St. Mary's Church in Barnegat, New Jersey. He and his wife Alicia have been married 23 years, 2 beautiful children, Amy and Michael. Jeff's a photojournalist, and he's the owner of Air 7 Media, which he'll tell us about. It's an independent production company that produces a wide range of multimedia content. Jeff also is the art director and photographer for Aletheia. And Aletheia, which he'll tell us about, is a worldwide Catholic network sharing faith resources for those seeking the truth. Jeff's here to tell us about a photo assignment. Some may call it a mission to Amman, Jordan. He'll tell us what he documented in his photos, but more importantly, how his experience transformed his own spiritual life. Jeff, real pleasure. Welcome to the Catholic Corner.
Thank you, Monsignor. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. How about a little bit about yourself? Let's start way back when and your career as a photographer. I'm always interested in how you fellas and gals, get interested in all of this and the production of God's creation.
Amen. Well, I didn't start out as a photographer.
Okay.
I started out in the entertainment industry as a musician. And it's funny, actually, there's a lot of, if you look, people like Bryan Adams, lots of musicians over the course of time, it's kind of like a weird relationship between music and photography. And it's not something I can explain. I don't know how it happens, but I did start out in the music industry. After many, many years within the industry, my wife and I were married, started having a family, and I felt that the music industry was not the most wholesome environment for me to raise my family.
Now, when you said music industry, did you play in a band or something, or compose music?
I was a touring musician for several years. I worked, internationally. Did a lot of stuff. I was in the heavy metal world. I don't want to get into too many details, but then I went into the studio business, and I worked at which was the 3rd largest studio in the world, a place called Power Station. I was the chief production coordinator there. We produced over 600 gold and platinum albums. At the studio, I think it was around the mid to late 90s, the studio had changed hands. It was bought up by a Japanese company. And at that point in time, I thought to myself, this is a really good time to make a break. And I went into the visual arts, which was something that I had always done, but I didn't do it professionally. Then at a certain point in time, just kind of fast forwarding to bring it up to how I got into photography, I had I guess you would call it a reversion to the Catholic faith. I left the music industry. I had started getting into the visual arts. I started seeking for myself some meaning and trying to find, if God was real. That was really what the whole thing was all about. After my conversion, should I share with that with you?
Sure, I'd love to hear that.
Well,
listen.
Long story short,
Yeah.
and somebody had said this to me recently, actually when I was on the trip to Jordan, they said, "You were an atheist." And I was like, I guess so, because by definition an atheist is somebody who doesn't believe in God. And at this point in time in my life, I guess it was the early 2000s, 2003, 2004, I did not. I doubted that he existed.
That's a little different than being an atheist.
True, but the thing is, I doubted that he existed to the point where I was starting to make decisions that he didn't. Like, the whole thing was, it came down to my children I wanted my children to go to Catholic school, and we had just bought a house, which happened to be 2 blocks from St. Mary's in Barnegat, and I looked at the bills, and I was like, there's really no point in sending our kids to Catholic school if I don't believe in God. And I really don't, and it became a real conflict for me, because I was like, well, if I don't believe in God, why am I doing this? Why am I committing these monies? What am I teaching my kids? Why would I go to church? Why would I? So all these things came up. I ended up making a deal with myself. I really have to put it that way, because I didn't believe that God really existed. I was really pretty committed in that. It's not that I was resistant to it. It's not that I had any animus towards any Christians or anybody like that. But what I did feel was that, well, I needed to know if God was real. So being Catholic, raised Catholic and whatnot, my wife is Catholic, I made a deal with myself, and I said, you know what, I'm going to try to see if God is real. And what I started doing is going to Mass. I went to confession because that's what you're supposed to do. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to Mass. And since I'm one of these people that goes all the way with anything, I said, I'll go to Mass every day. And I'm just going to say it like it is. And one of the things that it kind of got me was that, from what I do know about the faith, is that the 10 Commandments are in order. And the first one was, thou shalt love God with your, and I was like, well, I don't love God. I mean, it's like, not only do I not think he exists, but I don't love him. I mean, like in my heart of hearts. So I'm going to hell. So I figured, well, let's give it a shot. I started going to Mass, and the prayer that I would make, or whatever the speech I would make, would be, hi, if you're there, you know I don't love you. And if you're there, I really would like to know. Something to that effect. Sure. So that went on for day after day after day. About 2, maybe 3 months in, one day, I'm kneeling down, and the only thing I can say is that he touched me. Yeah. It's that I was filled with an experience that there was a completeness, there was a joy, there was a presence, there was a love, and people intellectualize atheism or not believing in God and things like that, but until you've sought him, and when you have that encounter, it changes everything. It does. So I leave the church, I walk out, and I'm like, holy crap, you're real. It's like I go home, my wife is at home, and she's like, what happened to you? And I'm like, and then I realized at that point in time that, if God was real, and if all this was his creation, and if I was his creation, it's kind of like all this stuff kind of floods yourself at one time. Yeah. Well, then everything that I do, what else matters other than serving him? That's right. So the one thing I did is I was in media for a long time, so I started looking around for things to do in media. And I started looking at what Catholic media looked like. I wasn't impressed. And one of the things that web development, I guess in the 2004, 2005, that era, right around there, Catholic websites and things like that were pretty rough. It's like things were, and one of the big things that was missing was imagery. So I took pictures, I did graphic arts. I said, I'm going to devote myself to making Catholic websites look good. I'm going to try to bring the imagery and the beauty of the Catholic Church to be able to bring that online to do something. So anyway, that's where it began with the photography. So basically it was kind of like, it was the faith that propelled the photography, and in being able to try to present evangelization through imagery is what that is. So
I can just feel what you're saying, and I can just because all creation to me is part of God. I mean, you just can't take a step without knowing his presence is there if you allow that to be part of your life and part of your joy. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your production company. A7M, is that kind of what you just described?
It's Air 7. This is actually a new venture, again, it's like, this all started in maybe 10 years ago, this path. And, it's been very interesting because when you open yourself up to serve God and you try to take yourself out of the way, and try to let him do the steering, and that's not been the way it's been, okay? It's like most of the time I think I'm in charge, and I'm going and I'm making all kinds of bad decisions and left turns or right turns, and there's been a lot of problems and mistakes, and I probably haven't, okay. Anyway, the beginning of 2015, I was approached by somebody because at this point in time, I've done stuff in Catholic media. Some people know who I am. I've been very fortunate, very blessed to be involved with a lot of different projects. Person approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in, building a production space? And I said, maybe. And I'm thinking to myself on my Catholic media budget, I'm like, no. So he said, well, I'll make it so that you can afford to do this. I was like, okay. And then I was presented with this opportunity to build a production. I was given basically a piece of a building. And I could do what I wanted with the building. The lease terms are very, very favorable. And the idea is that I could build a center which could become, Nashville is Nashville. New York is New York. LA is LA. They're hubs of creativity. It's where people that are creative people kind of come to work together, to combine, to collaborate. And the idea was the idea I had in mind, and it wasn't that it was really my idea necessarily, but was that it would be great to be able to create some kind of creative community that's Catholic that would serve the church in that way, or build the kingdom. Anyway, this place that we have is on Long Beach Island. It's in Ship Bottom. It's in the heart of the surfing community. It's a wonderful facility now. We have a 5,000 square foot back lot. We have a 1,000 square foot indoor production space. We have control rooms. We have full audio production capability, like 94 channels. Okay, we got lots of stuff. It's great. Thank God. The thing is that it's wonderful in and of itself for what it is, but it's really kind of pointless without having people there to be able to produce stuff. I had put out calls to people to invite them to come, to people that are talented, people that might be able to do some type of work. We just started, and one of the things, there's a philosopher, he's world renowned, his name is Dr. Peter Kraft. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. Bishop Barron talks about him all the time in the Catholicism series. One associate producer that I work with, she and I were talking, it's like, well, we have this new studio now, it's by a beach, we want to do Catholic stuff. It's like, wouldn't it be cool to do something with surfing? I'm like, well, yeah, surfing, that sounds like a good idea, it makes sense. So she's like, Dr. Peter Kraft surfs. And I'm like, sure, yeah, that's right. It's like saying, well, yeah, sure, like this wonderfully big, important person does this. And it's like, what's that got to do with us? She says, I met him once. I was like, yeah. It's like, I could call him and see if he'll come down. He's a professor at Boston College and King's College, some other stuff. He's written over 70 books. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so she calls him, and she says, because he had written 2 books about the spirituality of surfing. This is going back in the 80s, I guess, or whatever. And she calls him up, and she says, would you be interested in coming in and shooting a video series on, or doing some series of talks and whatnot on the beach about surfing and stuff like that, and come and we'll just do some stuff. And his answer to her was, who passes up an invitation to LBI?
Yeah. That's
sure enough, he comes down, and we spent a week or 2 wonderful weeks shooting and doing stuff, and it's a very different type of project because he's a very, very intelligent person with a lot of really incredible answers to world things. He is the kind of person who could take the most complex thing, unlike me, and make it and kind of simplify it down to one sentence. And we had a couple of young kids, I take that back, a couple of young people. I have more respect for them than you'll ever know. They're drama and film major, high school age people, and they were with him. Now, he's 78 years old, and we had them together in the dynamic because of the questions they were asking and the answers that he was giving. It was unbelievable. So that project's due out in the beginning of 2016. It's our first major project that we did.
We're going to have to maybe get you
I'm
back
sorry,
with that project. Now, is that connected with Alatea?
Alatea, no, it's actually an independent project. Air 7 is an independently owned and operated studio. It's something that, again, one of the things I just have to say is that with Air 7, from the very beginning, I felt like I had no control over the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It was dropped in my lap. How we were going to equip the place, how we were going to build the place, everything. I had no answers moving in. And this was the first time in my life, I can say that, I didn't feel that I was being led by God. I felt like I was being pushed by him. Mm. And I just was kind of like, all right, you're doing the steering, you're doing the pushing, I'm just going to go with this. Because that's the way it went. And right up to this day, still.
When God wants something, he'll get it done.
It's getting done in spite of me, I guess, yeah.
But tell me a little bit then about Alatea. I know you've been to Jordan.
Yeah, Alatea was kind of, with the Jordan thing, Alatea, just a little bit of background, is that it is an international news and commentary website. We have 6 language editions. It's founded by the person who founded it was the head of Zenit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, sure, no, absolutely.
And then back in 2000, I think it was like 8 years ago. He had left Zenit, and he had gone on to form Alatea. A lot of the people that were the original editorial staff at Zenit had come with him, and they'd formed up in Rome this particular agency. It has been rocky, to put it mildly, their beginnings, because they've had several false starts over the past couple of years. But up until now, this year, I came on board about 4 years ago as a photo editor. I went from photo editor to a creative director, and then from creative director, I went to art director for for all the language editions. I run the photo department for them. and I take care of just, I guess, the general look of things. I'm not the only person involved with that. There's a lot of people. But
Tell me, was that like your idea to go to Jordan, or was that just an assignment?
Jordan's another thing entirely. Jordan happened as a result. I mean, it's kind of everything. You know how it is nothing is connected.
Dots
exactly.
are connected.
Yeah. I had covered Pope Francis in Philly and New York just when his visit was here. And I had been in touch with a good friend of mine, Nancy Wycheck, from the Council of the USCCB. She used to be their media manager, whatever. I think she stepped out at this point, but now she came back for this trip to do it. She had been invited to go to Jordan by the Jordanian government on a press tour, and she couldn't make it. And so she referred them to me, saying, this guy from Alatea, who's this, that, the other thing, he might want to go. So I get a call from this woman, Christine Moore, who's the head of the JTB, they call it. And she asked, it's like, would you like to come to Jordan to go to these different places? I said, well, what's involved here? And, being, just a guy who's really never been to the Middle East before, it's like, the Middle East, it's like, I mean, with all the problems and everything. And it's like, no, it's going to be safe. It's all sponsored by we'll take care of everything. I'm like, all right, I'll go. What the heck? I got nothing. Oh.
And your wife was saying a rosary for you?
My wife was saying a rosary for me. So are my kids. So, but going over there was, okay, so yeah, going to Jordan was, it changed me in so many different ways. I mean, one of the things is just the perspective of what the Middle East is and what one of the things about the refugee thing, it's like one of the big things I took away from the whole, and without getting specifically into refugees, I think I understand better why these people are so profoundly passionate about their faith. It's because, okay, one of the places I had visited was the baptismal site where Jesus was baptized. In Jordan. It's
Jordan River?
I forget the name. It's on the Jordan River, and we were at the actual pilgrimage site where it was, and I'll never forget it because when you do photography, and a lot of times you can become very, very jaded. You go to a lot of different places. You've seen everything. You have special access to stuff, so you just kind of like it's just another place. Well, I've been to a lot of just another place, St. Peter's, So I'm walking up to the site, right? It's like we're maybe 100 yards out. And I'm like, I started to well up. It's like, and I wasn't happy, I wasn't sad or anything like that, but I was just overcome with emotion. And as we finally walked right up upon the water in this location, the reality of what had happened there, I was like, this is where the sky opened up.
Yeah.
This is where the Holy Spirit descended on Christ. This is where his ministry began.
And this is where you hear, this is my son whom I love.
And it's like, and it just was like, and I was in tears, and I'm like, and I think from that moment, because we had met with a lot of different refugees and whatnot afterwards, I had realized that, it might seem like people say, oh, you should go to the Holy Land, or oh, you should go to these different holy sites and everything, take pilgrimage, go there and everything. You should. And you really should, because to walk in those places is not the same thing as seeing a TV show about them. It's not the same thing as, and
especially when you go there with your heart open for prayer.
It's indescribable. Yeah. It really is. And I think that, but here's the thing, going to the people that are, are being persecuted for their faith there, and that aren't backing down, that are either being killed, paying, exorbitant fees and whatever to live in their communities, or leaving their homes and everything they left behind. It's having experience, I guess it's walking in the same sands as Christ did that does it. It's like, because it's like there's a tangibility over there.
It's the earth.
Faith. It is.
It's the earth.
It's, it's red with, we stayed one night in the Wadi Rum, which is a desert that's got all kinds of history. Lawrence of Arabia was filmed there. That movie with Matt Damon, Martian, was filmed there. It's got red sand. It's kind of a crazy thing. I mean, not that, it's not red because of blood or something, but it just was kind of weird. I was like the correlation, thinking to myself, like this part of the world has got so much blood in the sand, from people dying for their faith. And, But that's what makes it so rich. That's what makes it so.
That's what makes it sacred. You know, I know you take a lot of pictures, and I love to see them, and maybe you can explain them a little bit and talk about the experience of Jordan and the photography.
Of course. Well, picking up on what we were talking about, just in terms of the level of passion and commitment to the faith that the people have that are there. These pictures, several of these pictures here are of Syrian and Iraqi refugees that we had the privilege of spending time with. It was a real eye-opener for me because as a photo editor at Alatea, when we do a lot of this stuff, we watch the wire services all the time between AP, AFP, different agencies. We see a lot of imagery come in of the refugees, and normally they're either in boats, they're dirty, they're a lot of different things, but they all pretty much look, the same. And the thing is that there's a certain, almost what you would call a refugee look, and I say that with all due respect. But the thing is, that's not the reality. That's maybe the travel or what they're going through, but that's not who they are. And that was something that I was it was a real eye-opener for me, because there's a parish in Amman, and there's Father Nabil Haddad, who's the head of the interfaith coalition that's there in Amman. He had set it up so that we would be able to meet about 150 refugees. The parish, St. George's Parish in Amman, now I don't know this for a fact, I don't know what the order was, but I know that Pope Francis at some point in time, and don't quote me on this, but Pope Francis had said to some effect that he was asking every parish in Italy to open their homes to one refugee family, something like that.
No, you got it right.
Okay,
you got it right.
This priest, about a year ago, had decided to do just this on his own, without any help from anybody else. And he said, he was tired of, I don't know what his frustrations were, but he said, we're going to be taking in refugees to our side. So he took in about 100, it's something like 80 families they took into their parish. The parish absorbed these families, extra rooms, apartments that weren't rented. They worked it out because there was a will within the parish to accept these people in. In meeting them and speaking with them, I began to realize that, and actually just through conversations, is that they, number one, they're so similar to like this gentleman here. It's like, these are regular, well, first off, you can see the passion. It's like their passion for their faith, holy mackerel. But okay, but the thing is that they're really no different than you or than I. It's like they have cable stations
look
that
at
they
that
like.
little girl.
I know. Well, there's a tangibility about faith over there that I'm telling you, it's like, okay. Some of the families, like the fathers, it's like, they have jobs, they have cars, they have, careers even. They went to college, they did things, and they had homes, they had, their stuff, they had their stuffed animals, they had all these things like a regular family would in America, except they were presented with the challenge, you can stay and convert, you can stay and be killed, or you can leave. And they chose to take their families and to leave, as opposed to, but
sometimes they even have to pay a tax or something.
or pay it, whatever the the specifics were. I'm a photographer, not a journalist per se, so I don't write everything down. But the thing is that what blew me away was the fact that they are so similar. They're regular people that if we were faced with the same situation, I don't know if I would do the same thing. It's like, I would pray that I would. I would hope to have the grace to do that. But these people did, regardless of.
Right.
So, all right. One of the things also that I learned from them was that and this is kind of a big misconception, I think. Father Nabil had said to us, he said that when he was talking about the West's response and about how we can help the refugees and what can be done from the West and from the church and from everything. And I thought what he said was pretty profound. And he said, if you want to help the refugees not to be refugees. And basically what he was asking, he said that their churches are empty and their homes are empty and they need to be returned to their churches and to their homes. I don't know. It's like
to their own homes.
Homes, yeah. And the thing is, what's easier? Is it easier to take them into the United States or to bring them back to their home? I don't know the answers. But the thing is that I think that for a lot of the refugees, really in their heart, what they would like is to go back home.
Well, I think that's true. Not just the refugees in the Middle East. I think refugees all over.
Right.
I mean, there are times, and even when we look at our own backgrounds, our family backgrounds, that maybe they do want to come to the United States or a place like the United States. But there is something of your home. I mean, there is something about where you were born, and you know, people just don't always want to run away from that.
No.
And they want the ability. I think you'd tell me they want to raise their children. They want their children to be safe. They want their children to be free. They want their children to grow up and become good men and women in God's creation.
They do.
That's well, I think, and these pictures are so beautiful, Jeff. I mean, you know, just what's some of your best memories from being over there in those days, the days you were there?
Well, actually, this guy right here, his name is Mountain Butoric. He's what they call the Catholic Traveler. He's pretty famous. He's been on several Sirius XM satellite things. He runs pilgrimages, Catholic pilgrimages to the Middle East, to the Holy Land.
And his name is?
Mountain Butoric.
Butoric.
The Catholic Traveler. Anyway, I met him once before in Rome, and he was working with a Catholic talk show host, a guy named Lino Rulli from the Catholic Channel out of the Archdiocese of New York. And he was one of the journalists that was on the trip. And being able to spend time with him was a wonderful thing from the standpoint, I mean, and this is maybe seems like a trivial type of thing, but he has a great depth of knowledge about what's going on. This, what you're looking at, is what they call a stone door. And apparently that's the way they did it at one point in time. The door weighs about 2,600 pounds, but remarkably, you can actually push it open and shut. It's like, you know, it's a very, very primitive device, but it works. So.
And that door has so much meaning, not only in faith, but to family life.
Sure.
I mean, oh gosh, we could just talk about even the doors of the church are open and has so much great meaning. In about 30 seconds,
sure.
Where are you going to go from here?
God knows.
And he does know.
One step at a time. Wherever he wants me to go, I'll go. But I think that what we're trying to do is get Air 7 moving, trying to continue to do things better in Catholic media, try to raise the standard and raise the bar, to be able to, I guess in one word.
Jeff, don't quit. You're a beautiful guy.
Communicate.
Well, we are so blessed for Jeff and his family and the love that he has. For more information and other stories of God, please go to aleteia.org. That's ALETEIA.org. You know what? We're all refugees. Love each other. We're brothers and sisters in God. Thank you, brother. That was wonderful.